afternoon. It's good to see everybody. I almost went with good morning. Everything's just kind of blurring together. It's one of those days. Listen, thank you again for making the trip back. This is part of what we talked about doing when we concluded the working group, when we finished the actual work of the working group and issued our recommendations. Part of that was we would get back together to kind of see where we're at and how far we've progressed. Now, look, I've been a part of a lot of different working groups and a lot of committees. I have never in my life seen a working group that was able to get the follow-up on their recommendations the way we have in this short period of time. I mean, it's only been 6 months. And we're going to review pretty much recommendation by recommendation where we're at. We're going to have people talk about that, but it's really not only a result of the good work that you all did, the strength of the recommendations being on point, because again, a lot of times a problem is if you have a working group and you just kick out aspirational, or I'll say, well, aspirational. We'll just use aspirational. We'll use the word aspirational. Aspirational or like dreamy type recommendations, you just never get to them. There's never the follow-up. What you all did is you looked at the issues. We brought in subject matter experts to kind of lay out what those were, and we took a really focused approach on hitting recommendations that would move the needle and recommendations that we could achieve. And again, I'm pleased to report, as you're going to see, the overwhelming majority of those recommendations have had action on them. So I just, again, on behalf of Governor DeWine, we cannot thank you enough for the time, the energy, and the passion that you brought to this project. The way we're going to do this, we're going to walk through each recommendation, and we're going to talk about it. Although we're not going to go recommendation 1, recommendation 2, we're not going in chronological order. We're going in subject matter order. So if you remember, some of the recommendations were specific to legislation. Some of them were specific to policy, or some of them were specific to, us at the administration taking action. So we've divided the report out into the subject matter areas, and we're going to go grouping by grouping. What I'll do is I will go through the actual recommendations. I'll read the recommendations that we're going to cover, and then I'll turn it over to the person or group of people who are going to report. Before we go any further, this is just our opening comments portion. Is there anything that anybody here would like to add, any updates that we're not going to cover with the agenda that we have for the group? Yes, Sylvia.
Hi. We're really excited since the working group had been meeting. The Cleveland Police Department and Cleveland Missing took what we were doing very seriously, and we're really excited to introduce to you today to Cassandra, and she is our part-time social worker that will work specifically with Cleveland Police and the detectives of the Missing Persons Unit, and she'll be working with families specifically.
And then tell us a little bit about yourself.
I have a master's in social work from University of Akron. My background was funeral directing. I worked for Life Bank. I have a lot of connections with vulnerable people in the state. My husband is a Cleveland police officer as well. My brothers both were, so I'm very connected to Cleveland Police, and I'm excited to help. And I grew up very close to where Gina DeJesus was abducted from, so.
And Kevin, you've been involved in the selection and development of this program. As we were talking before the meeting started, one of the things I talked about is how important it is to have the relationships with law enforcement. So it sounds like those relationships are already there. I hope you all are excited. I don't know if you have any feedback for the group, but it looks like it's going to be a pretty collaborative approach to dealing with some of the issues that we saw here. Again, actually having a liaison that kind of bridges that gap between law enforcement and the family. So Kevin, you want to add?
Yeah, it was great collaborating with Sylvie on this, and we've been talking since this came up as a subject here, and part of it was Cassandra's going to be working with May Dugan part-time and Cleveland Missing. So it was great because they went through, May Dugan and Cleveland Missing went together and interviewed the initial group of people, and then I came in at the final selections to help them to determine what might be serve, the division the best, and Cassandra was a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned. So it was really good. So now we're working with our upper management to put it on paper and to get things going. So it's really, really good.
So what I would love to see, I think, is if there was some way for you to provide us, the group, feedback in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, whatever that looks like, with respect to how the program's working, from both the law enforcement and the civilian side. Because again, I think what we should do is take a look at studying the effectiveness of this. And if this is a model that works, then do we take this model out to other agencies? Do we try to find grant funding to help fund this model for other agencies? So I think the key for that will number one will be for you all to go up and do that great work. Number two will be for us to keep track and get the feedback on how it's going. And it's got to be honest, good feedback. If there's problems or struggles, we want to know about that as well, because those won't be unique to you. And as you guys work your way through getting past those struggles or problems, those are lessons learned that we'll want to take to other areas of the state. So Sylvia, I gotta tip my hat to you for both of you for being progressive in this area, being proactive in this area, and really kind of addressing something that we brought up multiple times during our working group meetings. So great job. Before I go any further at all, so Kristen Slaper, you all have worked with Kristen. Kristen actually ran one of our meetings that I couldn't be at. Kristen has done a lot of work in the follow-up area. Kristen, I see you in the back. If you could just come on up here. So we've got a couple people who aren't here. Just go ahead and come on up and sit up here. Because you've helped coordinate all of this stuff, I want to have you up here in case I need to phone a friend. I don't have to shout to the back of the room for it. So come on up and grab a seat. So, all right. And again, I can't thank Kristen enough. I know she's been on the phone with all of you all, or many of you, chasing down follow-up on these recommendations and kind of driving the train with adoption of these recommendations. So we are actually going to go ahead and start. We have Representative Cockley with us here today. I know your time is limited. If you remember, several of our, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of our recommendations dealt with legislative proposals. We've been very fortunate to have both Representative Cockley and then Representative Abrams, who have been willing to kind of take up this mantle for us and move in this space. So with respect to recommendations 4 and 8, I believe that, 4 and 8 have been encompassed by House Bill 217, which is Representative Cockley's bill. I'm going to just go through and read recommendations 4 and 8, and then I'm going to turn it over to you, Representative Cockley, to talk about your bill and what you're doing in the space. So recommendation 4 is that the Ohio General Assembly should create legislation authorizing law enforcement and county prosecutors to seek search warrants to gather information and records that may help them locate a high-risk missing person. So that's recommendation number 4. Recommendation number 8 is the Ohio General Assembly should create legislation requiring local law enforcement agencies to digitize unresolved missing persons reports prior to the destruction of paper files. And the BCI should also create a digital repository to store missing persons case records from local law enforcement agencies. And let me wrap just a little bit of context around both of those. Number 4 dealt with these agencies that need records pretty quickly, phone records, internet records, social media records. But because we don't know whether or not it's a criminal case, it's sometimes hard to get those search warrants. So we wanted to be able to have some kind of legal process where we could get records that may lead us to a missing person in a situation where we haven't yet determined whether or not there was criminal action. And then number 8 came from some of these cases that have been sitting around for a long, long time, where that case file had actually been destroyed, and then we develop a cold case unit or some other unit that wants to take a look at it and the case file, the paper file no longer exists. So Representative, if you want to come, you might as well come up front because we're live streaming it out here. So if you come on up and we'll turn it over to you.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for having me today. I know I've emailed with many of you, and a few of you I've met in person, so it's really great to be back here and connect on what hopefully is going to be the final steps for some of these pieces of legislation to become law, and then later down the road we can tweak it if we need to. So this is a really, really big step, and this update comes at a really great time because we just received what I hope to be final bill language from the bill drafters at LSC yesterday. So,
I'm sorry, do you mind just stepping to the mic?
Oh.
So our people online can hear you. Sorry about that.
I didn't even see
so that's
this.
good. So listen, I probably should have laid those ground rules. I didn't know that one. So because we are doing online, I think that mic is tied into the camera. So that goes to anybody who is coming up here to speak. We're going to have to do it from the podium. So I apologize for not letting you all know that.
no, totally fine. Someone mentioned the audio is difficult to pick up for online streaming, but I did not actually see the microphone, so thank you.
I should have directed you. To
No,
it, so it's on
totally
me. Yep,
fine.
gotcha.
And I guess just a really brief recap, this meeting comes at a really great time because we just received what I hope to be final bill from LSC. We took that bill yesterday, we sent it to some of the stakeholders and professionals doing the work to make sure they can give a quick glance over it to ensure everything is buttoned up. And Chairwoman Abrams, she is hoping to bring the bill to committee on Tuesday for a committee vote with the goal of having it on the House floor Wednesday. So really quick turnaround. We are hopeful, but we don't ultimately find out whether or not the vote will be until next week. So I was telling Amy and my legislative aide Sol to make sure it's on the calendar because there's a good chance, but we won't actually know until next week. And in the meantime, we've sent it to DPS, the Attorney General's office, and the Ohio Judicial Conference to make sure we have everything buttoned up. A few of the things we really want to make sure that the intention of these recommendations match the bill's language and make sure that the people doing the work, specifically within DPS, the information is accurately articulated in that language. So we got that bill back yesterday. I'm really excited. Representative Ritter is also very excited. We have been really grateful that Chairwoman Abrams has been willing to work with us to button this up and prioritize it in committee. So we are feeling good about it overall.
So then it's going to go to the Senate. Let's assume that it passes. It's going to the Senate side. What do you need from us, or what can we all do to help that get through the Senate?
Great question. Definitely reach out to the Senate side, who I am not positive which committee it will go to or who the chair is, but definitely reach out to that senator and urge them to bring it through committee and bring it to a vote as soon as possible. I'm hoping that because we have been so intentional about the language and we've asked the stakeholders and the professionals doing the work to add input, that there won't be any changes and it will just go through the Senate and it'll be ready to go. If there are any changes on the Senate side, then it will come back to the House for another vote. And that's why it's really, really important that we have been so intentional about the language in the bill.
Any questions for the representative? So listen, thank you. Again, this stuff doesn't make it through without your help. We needed a champion over there in the General Assembly, and you were already out front on it to begin with, but you certainly have picked up the mantle for us and kind of carried this as well. And I'm going to talk for a second. I know Cindy Abrams, Representative Abrams, is the chair of the Public Safety Committee in the House. And she's doing some work in this space as well for us on some of these other recommendations. I'm going to talk about that. But really, that group that you have together over there has done a really good job of moving this important legislation through. So we thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
And thank you all. I try to be responsive in a timely manner, so if you do have any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out. I want to be a resource for you and make sure that I am keeping up with your expectations as a working group, because you all have been the ones putting in the work and have the lived experiences. So please reach out if you do end up having any follow-up questions, and thank you again for having me today.
Thank you very much. We certainly appreciate you. All right, I talked about Representative Abrams. A group of us went and sat down with Representative Abrams because she is the chair of the House Public Safety Committee. She also is a former law enforcement officer and is very active in this space. So we sat down and we talked to her about some of these other recommendations that had not been encompassed in House Bill 217 yet. So the other recommendations that she is working on for us right now, we have actually seen language that address these recommendations, are 1, 5, and 6. So number 1 is the Ohio General Assembly should codify criteria for Ohio's Endangered Missing Child Alert. So we sat down and we went over that with her. We have seen language that actually does that. Number 5 is the Ohio General Assembly should create legislation to increase criminal penalties for suspects who interfere with custody by removing a child or children out of the state or to a foreign nation. And again, you remember we had some discussion about just how difficult it is a lot of times when a child is removed out of the state, or even worse, out of the country, to get them back, number 1. But number 2 is that the penalties just don't adjust. It certainly is more aggravating legally aggravating when you take a child across state lines or you take a child out of the country. And the penalties need to reflect the seriousness of that act. So Representative Abrams is helping us out in that space too. And then number 6 is the Ohio General Assembly should mandate that interference with custody arrest warrants be entered into leads and NCIC with a nationwide pickup radius. Again, we sat down with Representative Abrams. We talked to her about that. And she has language for us in that space as well. And again, you remember as we talked about it, part of the problem was some of these warrants. So you'd have a non-custodial parent take a child out of state, and some of those warrants were not being issued into NCIC with a nationwide pickup, which meant if the person was picked up on a traffic stop in Michigan or Pennsylvania or Kentucky, that there was no pickup on that warrant, so they would be released with the child. So I don't know exactly when the plan is to introduce this new bill. I don't know. Again, I don't know if there's a plan to kind of incorporate it with some other stuff that's going on in this space, but I do know that Representative Abrams has agreed to take this up. I do know that the draft language does exist, and I think you're going to see some movement in this space. I would expect pretty quickly. So we'll see there. Any questions about the legislative side at all? There is another House bill that is out there right now that is in our space, or in the space of some of the issues we talked about. That's House Bill 259. That bill creates an alert for missing children who have autism. So again, as you remember, Ms. Cook's case where her child wandered off and unfortunately died. This is a case that creates, again, a new class of alerts for these kids. So we'll continue to track and monitor that. So any questions with respect to legislation? All right, excellent. So moving on next, we're going to go to recommendation 2. Recommendation 2 was that the Ohio State Highway Patrol should work with BCI to create an automatic process to notify necessary law enforcement agencies of endangered missing child alerts. So I'm going to turn it over now to Captain Rains and Bruce Pijanowski from the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation And then I am going to ask real quick, Brett, are we good since we have mics here? Are they good to sit at the table and talk? Okay, so you guys can sit where you're at and talk. So who's kicking it off? Captain Raines or Bruce?
I'll start it.
All right.
You do implementation, I'll do operations. That sounds good. So if you recall during my Ohio Alerts presentation, the Amber Alert and the Endangered Missing Adult Alert are the only two alerts that when entered into NCIC, it automatically sends a message notifying law enforcement in the county that it's occurred, as well as adjacent counties of that either abduction or that endangered missing adult. Endangered missing children didn't have that, and if an agency actually wanted an endangered missing child alert to be activated, they literally had to physically call BCI to have that done. So obviously time is of the essence in these types of things when alert is being requested, so that NCIC entry and automatic notification is kind of a force multiplier to get agencies looking for the missing person, whether it's an abducted child or endangered missing child or endangered missing adult. So I worked with Jeremy Hansford at Leeds, and they did create a new MNP code. I actually gave you a handout of what a screenshot of that looks like. In the missing persons or MNP code, there's several that you can select from, and you'll see one that says JA for Juvenile Alert Endangered Missing Child. So now when somebody wants an endangered missing child alert, they can select that JA code, which will do all the things that needed to be done to automatically know law enforcement and notify BCI. So just like an Amber Alert, it's agencies with an ORI in the county, adjacent counties, BCI is notified, the Highway Patrol Comm Center is notified the same way it is for each of those alerts. The only exception to that notification would be the National Center for Missing Exploited Children only receives the alert when the AA code for an Amber Alert is entered based on their area of interest. So.
Before we go to Bruce, got a question real quick. We have just over 900 law enforcement agencies in the state. What are we doing to educate them on this change?
Good question. So just recently, October 31st, the Ohio Amber Alert Advisory Committee hosted our annual alert symposium, and Brent Currents from BCI's Missing Persons Unit actually spoke to the 161 people that were there in law enforcement, including dispatchers and sworn officers, and that's one of the things he went over. We also have implemented discussion about that into the Ohio Alerts training that we go out and do the 4-hour training to law enforcement, and then I think Bruce has some information on what they've done as well.
That's a nice segue to Bruce. How about that?
So operationally, once that JA code is entered into the missing child entry, that comes into our radio room, and then that starts our process. And part of that includes contacting an agent and command staff, and then the agent will reach out to the agency to figure out exactly what they need, and then go from there, offer assistance, offer analysis, criminal intelligence analysis, and assist any way we can. One of the things we're seeing is that when I think this rolled out July 31st, we started seeing immediate results, which is good. We're seeing a little bit of misunderstanding about it. So in terms of the education, I know that our outreach folks have been given that information to start talking about what the JA code is and when it should be used. We sent out an all-term on Leeds earlier this week. So our hope is that, sometimes these messages go to command staff and it may not filter down, but if it lands right on a dispatch center, maybe they'll get that and see that. And it'll also keep the fact that code exists kind of in the forefront. And we're also continuing to talk about it when we're going out to speak to groups, and we're promoting the JA code and also what the correct usage of that is.
Is there anything that we can do here at DPS Maine or through our public safety comms to help push stuff out for you?
I think it's in the Leeds Bulletin, this next Leeds Bulletin. It's going to be in the Leeds Bulletin, and I know that's been a subject of the training as well.
They'll also be updating their Leeds manual as well too. So there may be an opportunity on behalf of the DPS and the work group to do some type of media release that, hey, this is out there now.
Okay.
That might not be a bad idea. it's public education as well as for law enforcement.
Okay. Brett Crowe, did you get that one? All right. All right, anything else with respect to recommendation 2? I'm going to go through the next set of recommendations, which I'm going to come back to you, Bruce, but I'm going to read the next set first. But before we leave, recommendation number 2, any questions on that? All right, the next set of recommendations we had we had a group that dealt with BCI, the Attorney General's office in general. So there are 4 that are aimed specifically at the Attorney General's office or BCI. I'm going to kick it to Bruce to cover those, but they're 9, 11, 13, and 14. So let me go through 9. 9 is the Ohio Peace Officer Training Academy within the Ohio Attorney General's office should develop advanced training for new missing persons investigators and law enforcement dispatchers. Number 11 is that the Ohio Attorney General's office should maintain a central repository of resources for law enforcement and families of missing persons. Number 13 is BCI should establish an annual conference for law enforcement and families with missing loved ones to collaborate and share best practices and raise awareness about missing person cases in Ohio. And then number 14 is BCI should establish a confidential forum for law enforcement and intelligence analysts conducting missing persons investigations to discuss techniques, establish cross-jurisdiction collaboration, and perform case reviews. So Bruce, can you give us an update on those?
I sure can, thank you, Director. Recommendation number 9, in terms of police training, there are a couple things that have happened with that will roll out, that have rolled out and will come out in 2026. The first is that in Ohio, every year the Ohio Peace Officer Training Commission creates mandatory continuing professional training. And next year, one of those mandatory topics is going to be missing persons training. And so we have worked with OPATA staff to provide them all the information from the topics and the subject matter area we've talked about to develop and create that training for next year. So that will be very current and relevant training that every certified police officer in the state of Ohio is going to have to participate in next year to maintain their certification. The training in terms of missing persons investigators, this is a little creative, but there is a core criminal investigator training class that's already part of the OPATA curriculum. That is one of the pieces towards achieving the Master Criminal Investigation certification. That class was revamped this year, and part of that update included modernizing some of the missing persons investigation training. And then an added component to that is that there is now a tabletop exercise involving a missing person. So that will touch a lot of, I think a lot of the larger agencies have their own missing persons unit, and they're very specific in the training and experience they have, but most of the medium and small sides either have a general division or patrol officers handle that. And this will touch a lot of those agencies and I think expand some of the subject matter knowledge to those agencies. Any questions on that?
Good stuff.
Recommendation number 11 was for the repository of resources for LE and for families of missing. So we've been in this realm for a long time, and on our webpage we currently have a lot of resources for both law enforcement and families. So that's something that we'll continue to do. One of the things we're looking at is updating that and making it easier to find and making it flow a little better and be a little easier to get through some of the information. So we're going to create a single landing page for that information and try to make it a little more visible on our main page. But a lot of the resources we have will be on that page. We'll also be updating some of the resources that are on there for both families and law enforcement. We have some palm cards that will be on there, and it'll just be cleaned up and modernized. On recommendation 13, establish a yearly conference for law enforcement and families. This is one where every year, we will sponsor a Ohio Missing Persons Day. So that is typically in the spring. In 2026, it's going to be on May 16th at Bowling Green State University. And what we plan to do is expand and rebrand that a little bit. So the event typically involves, it's an awareness and it's resources for families with missing loved ones. So families can come in, we bring a bunch of vendors in, a lot of support agencies will be there, BCI's there, we will collect DNA samples for Project Link submissions. Project Link is Linking Individuals Not Known. It's a program we have to make sure we have DNA standards available within the CODIS database so that if unidentified human remains are compared to that database, we have that sample to potentially match. So we already do a lot of those things. We're going to promote that and continue to do that. And one of the tentative plans we have is to actually expand that to include a day of training for law enforcement. So we will add that to that program we do with missing persons and have law enforcement in some way, shape, or form have a day's worth of training prior to that Missing Persons Day.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great addition. I know that your Missing Persons Day is a great event. It's community/family oriented. The addition of the training piece, I think, is key. So I'm glad to see you doing that. So.
Just a quick question, Bruce, when you're developing that training, will you include perhaps families as you're training law enforcement? I know that's something we do on a much smaller scale, but we do get in front of, for example, in Sandusky, once a year, we go to the police academy and we talk about the missing, families of the missings, and typically we bring in two families, one who's had a really great experience with law enforcement, and they talk about what great looks like, and then conversely, we bring in another family who maybe didn't have that experience and talk about what could have changed so that they might have had a better experience and what that might have meant to them.
You know, we're in the early stages of that, but absolutely, I think that makes sense. I know Jenny Lester's our SME in that area, and she has relationships with a lot of the families and works very closely with law enforcement and families. So we have a lot of resources there. I will include you in that list of resources. But yeah, that definitely is potential.
In any way we can help.
Hey, look, maybe if your program is succeeding wildly here in the next 6 months, you go as a best practice, or you highlight what you do over there. So, not hijacking your agenda, but throwing out ideas there. So, all right.
Hey, Director, I just have a question for Bruce. And Jenny, are we able to do for Project Link, doing the DNA like we used to do for the University of North Texas, of mailing you guys the samples as opposed to going through the portal, entering it, taking it out to BCI Richfield for us, and eliminate that? Is that a possibility?
Our lab no longer takes mail lab submissions, but they can always mail it to us as an analyst. I can submit it for you if that would help with something. But our lab, from what I understand, does not accept anything through the mail anymore. They used to, but I do still get DNA from other states if they collect for me for Link. They mail it to me and then I can submit it.
Mail to you directly?
Mhm.
Okay.
So we can work on something like that.
Okay.
If it makes your life easier.
Yeah, well, for the guys in the districts, it would be much easier. It's not as bad for me, but for them,
Yeah.
it's a little more challenging.
Yep. Whatever we can do to get the DNA submitted.
Okay.
Make happen.
All right. And then Bruce, 14, is 14 tied in with that same one, or would you do that?
14 is completely new and innovative.
Love it. Let's hear about it.
So Dana's laughing because this is her and Jenny's brainchild, but the recommendation is to create a confidential forum for law enforcement in the state. And so what BCI did, we gathered a bunch of the players here at this table, Detective Callahan, Sergeant Ersham, Chief Bahovey, several others, and some of the investigators we've worked with closely from across the state. and establish the Missing Persons Investigative Network. So we had our first meeting of that group to kind of come together and decide how we want that to look and what everyone thought would be beneficial. And so really collaboration and sharing is a big piece of what we plan to do. The group will continue to meet on a quarterly basis. We'll be moving it around the state, so it'll be in each quadrant at least once a year. And it will be it'll be an open group, but we want investigators there that are sponsored by their department. So the logistics of that probably aren't there yet, but it's coming. And we'll also be looking at, I think Jerry's recommendation was to create maybe a mailing list. So we have the group meetings where we'll be in person, so you're actually face to face with your peers in the area, but also create that email distribution list or some way to communicate with your SME peers so that you can push out a question or push out something and have someone who is knowledgeable in that area maybe respond back to you and increase our capabilities across the state.
Yeah, I like that. I was curious as to whether or not it would be set up so that, let's say I'm a detective at X police department, and I got a case that I'm just stumped on, and I feel like I've run all my stuff. Could I just bring, if I found out when that meeting was, could I bring it to you and just be like, hey, look, anybody here got any ideas for this? Or even, I guess you wouldn't have to even come to the meeting. You could establish some kind of talk group or something like that.
That's the intent.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, that's good stuff. So, good work. You listen. You all have been super proactive in this space, and I love to see you kind of running forward and getting this stuff done. Any questions about anything related to BCI at this point? All right, we're going to move to recommendation number 12, and there's some overlap with what Bruce just talked about with these other recommendations and recommendation number 12. But recommendation number 12 is the Ohio Attorney General's Office and the Ohio Department of Public Safety should partner to create educational resources outlining how and when to file a missing persons report. Like I said, Bruce, you kind of highlighted some of the stuff that you're doing in this area. I don't know if you have anything else that you specifically want to add there, but I'm gonna jump on here in a second. But
no, I don't think so. I think the only thing I would say is we need to work together on that, and like anything we develop, we want to make sure it's on our webpage.
Right.
Because we really want that to be the one-stop shop, so there's no confusion about where to go, and then the information's there, and then the links to who to contact is right there.
Which is perfect, because part of what we're doing is we're going to record videos for both law enforcement and general public talking about some of these issues. The scripts are done. I believe the scripts have been done for them, and I have Brett Crow sitting in the back of the room. I made Kristen come up here. I'm not going to make Brett come up here yet. Brett, I don't know if there's anything you add. The scripts are done. I was scheduled to go into the studio at one point, and then I had to cancel that because of scheduling conflict, but we're pretty much set to go. That should come out here in the next couple of weeks. And then what we will do, and again, we may be reaching out to see if there's anything you want to do in that space in our videos as well. But then we want to make sure that those videos are parked in your web spot.
Yeah, it might be nice if you forward the scripts to us,
Yeah.
just so we can make sure we're all staying
Aligned.
consistent.
Yep.
Right.
I tell you what we'll do. Before we go into the studio to record anything, we'll get our group together internally. We'll make sure that the messaging is on point. We'll see if there's anything that you guys want to do as far as bringing people over and hopping in on some of these videos. Maybe we'll do them joint videos. Maybe we'll do them, some with you, some with us. So, all right. So that's going to happen again. I'd like to see that happen in the next couple weeks. So if we can get on for a meeting in the next couple weeks with them to discuss it, and then Brett, if we can get into I keep calling it the lab, but if we can get into the studio in the next couple weeks as well, we'll be good. All right. Next, recommendation number 17 is where we're jumping to next. Recommendation number 17 is that the Ohio School Safety Center and the Ohio Bureau of Motor Vehicles should work together to increase awareness of the ID Our Kids Youth Identification Program. And we have with us both Charlie Norman, who is the Registrar of Motor Vehicles for the Ohio BMV, and we have Emily Torok, who's the Executive Director of the Ohio School Safety Center. Now, Charlie, you came and gave a presentation to the working group, so they're familiar with you and kind of what you do. Emily, when you get a chance, I want you to talk about the School Safety Center. I want you to talk about our liaison program, the fact that we have people going out to schools. So educate the folks here and whoever may be watching on what we do at the School Safety Center and with respect to our relationships in the schools, and then talk about this program. So Charlie?
Thank you, Director, and good afternoon to everybody. Just wanted to talk real briefly about some of the steps BMV has taken since the recommendations were released, and specifically in the area of the IDR Kids program. We first started working with DPS Communications to do a refresh of the IDR Kids graphics, something that's a little more up to date. We did a bunch of videos. In fact, I took my son to renew his ID at the Delaware Deputy Registrar Office, which he did not enjoy being on camera, but he was a trooper. My son is 11 years old. And so I think you have a copy of that refreshed palm card at each of your seats. So these cards are now at every deputy registrar office and BMV driver exam station in the state. So that's at about 230 brick and mortar locations. The next step we took was, and we did a bunch of media around that as well, I'm sorry. So print media, radio, television interviews. The next step we took was we wanted to certainly take another step to increase awareness. So as I mentioned at our last meeting, we do have a vehicle registration renewal notice that goes out to all Ohioans who have vehicles up for renewal annually. It's about 3 million pieces of mail each quarter. So the insert for that vehicle registration renewal notice for the next quarter, and we can keep it going, is going to be a IDR Kids specific insert. So that just started, so we're going to track that, see if that has juiced the numbers a little bit. It's a little too early to tell yet, but so that will be 3 million pieces of mail for as long as we want to keep it out there, Director. So we really think that will help in increasing awareness about IDR Kids. We also worked with school safety, so I'll let Emily talk about that.
So we'll talk about IDR Kids first, and then I'll go back and talk about the School Safety Center a little bit, just so you know a little bit more about us. But when this came to our attention, we share a lot of programs at the Department of Public Safety, not just school safety programs, but programs that the agency does. So we do them for the patrol, we do them for Kristen's team and Dream, which if you haven't seen the videos, they're really great on the website. But we share a lot of different materials. So we will go in person to schools and drop off these. We also do a lot of community events. So we get invited to safety days. We get invited during the summer to various community events to share mental health resources for the community and also for youth. And so we're planning to take these IDR Kids brochures there with us. And then when we go to meet with schools, we also just talk about it when we do our introduction meetings. So we're responsible for about 5,600 school buildings in the K-12 environment, as well as about 350 in higher ed. So that is a lot of opportunities and touch points with our schools, and we are planning to continue to share this message with them as well. So that is our partnership with the BMV on IDR Kids, other than the joint marketing and media that we did on social media and things like that. But the Ohio School Safety Center was created as a resource for both schools and first responders to help prevent, respond to different acts of violence, including things like self-harm. And we really want to focus on a holistic, solutions-based approach to school safety. So not just the traditional physical. I think a lot of people, when you hear school safety, you think of active shooter, but also the emotional as well. So a lot of my folks kind of do that work. So my team is split in two, as Director said. My school safety liaisons do a lot of the work interacting with our schools. They'll go in and do the first impression kind of look of, where are you at with your safety procedures and policies? What programs do you have in your school for anti-bullying? What's your suicide prevention plan looking like? What are your emergency operation plans doing? And they will do an assessment basically of where are you at and how can I help you? It is not that we're there to enforce necessarily to get them in trouble for not following the rules or anything like that. We genuinely want to be there to support our schools, and that's something that our liaisons do. So anytime that a school has a question, they are their first point of contact. And the best part of this program is they live in the communities they serve. So they know what's going on at their local school district. They know the politics of the community. They know what resources they have. They know if their levies pass or not. And they're able to really make sure they're there to support the schools when these things happen. So between physical and emotional safety, we've got it covered all across the state. We are about almost to 53 full-time staff, and we help both K-12, higher ed, public, private, doesn't matter. And we also help our first responders. We provide free trainings. We provide an annual school safety summit where everybody can come in for free. It's usually in Columbus. I think we're going to move it up to Kalahari next year. But we usually have close to almost 2,000 now people attend that conference. We get free continuing education credits, and we bring in experts from all across the U.S. to really explain, you know, what are the latest trends in school safety? What are the threats facing our youth? Right now, I think digital safety is one of the biggest things that I hope that you all look into, especially with nihilistic violent extremism. So, but we're here to help anytime, and I know Director is a big champion of our program. He actually helped us stand it up, so we're very excited that you were willing to consider us for this group. So.
Don't go anywhere yet. As you were talking, something popped into my head, so I got one for you. Here's what I want you to do. So the school safety conference, Ryan's laughing. The school safety conference, there are a lot of people who go to the school safety conference. So if you have people that you know in your stakeholder group that are any way involved with kids who are in school, I would encourage you to encourage them to sign up and go. I think we have, what, 1,500? Is that what you said, 1,500?
Yeah, we're probably going to approach 2,000 here soon.
So here's what we're going to have. One of the classes, one of the breakout sessions that's going to be held at the school safety conference next year will deal with missing kids and school staff and response to missing kids. So we're going to put our heads together and we're going to figure that out.
Yeah,
so
we can definitely do that. And just as a heads up, our target audience is pretty wide for this conference. So you'll have, you know, school transportation supervisors, our bus drivers, our school counselors, school resource officers, law enforcement, community providers, school administrators, you name it. Anybody who touches safety and security of a child when they're in a school environment, those are the people that come to the conference. So you're going to get a really wide net. So things like this are really good to share at our conferences.
All right. Every time our folks here at DPS step up to a microphone, step into something, they get more work. So that's the way we want it.
There's nothing wrong with that.
You know who wants it that way? Governor DeWine wants it
Yes.
that way. That's where we're doing it for him. So and that's what he expects. Before you go anywhere, both of you, Dr. Smith-Lockwood, coming to you. You've heard how we have kind of marketed this program. You heard how we can kind of work with the schools. You are a leader in the education profession. Is there anything that you can think of that we can do better in this space? Any areas where you'd like for us to interact with your folks, your schools, your colleagues in education?
I've seen some of the percolation of this work, so it's really exciting to see it on the school side. I've been thinking specifically about the ID for children who are in disadvantaged situations. I think that's the most challenging thing for us. So if there's any way for us when we are bringing in a child, especially a transfer student or one who's transient, to do that in-house, it would be amazing. And I'm not saying we have to do it for everybody, but in limited situations, that's probably our greatest need.
Yeah, that's a good. I saw Kristen taking notes on that one. So, and again, that's one that would be probably fairly low cost that we could we'll see if we can't shake a tree somewhere and make something fall out. So, any questions for Charlie or Emily with respect to this program? Anyone at the table see any areas where juvenile court?
How would we get a copy of these in every courthouse? Because we deal with kids all the time. Also, as our human services department, they can help them in their areas because they're dealing with kids. How do we get packets of these?
We can have some printed, and we'll have, I have a court liaison, we'll have her reach out and get them out there.
Judge, what is the best way for us to get them? Is it to you and then get it out, or is it to the spring? How do you want us to get it to you?
I don't know if the Supreme Court will set them out.
Okay.
But, I think but this will benefit every county if we can get them out to our counties and our Department of Human Services and things like this. But to get them out, I'm not sure how to ship them out. I don't know what the cost of that is or that type of thing. But, I mean, I'm willing to come pick them up from my surrounding counties and maybe, that type of thing. But I think this is great, so.
Yeah, if we have a point of contact, that's gonna be the easiest thing. I have field operations folks around the state that would be able to sort of do that physical delivery. It's more just making
Let me
sure.
work on that part so I can get points of contact for you.
Great.
But this is great.
I
So
can
I'm gonna-
ship
I'm
them
gonna-
too if there's an address. So.
I'm gonna pull a Governor DeWine on you there, Charlie. How long do you think it'll take you to get these in 88 juvenile courts across the state?
How fast can we get them printed, Brett? Okay,
Yeah, the patrol.
I'll work on
Yeah.
my part. I can get you a contact information, so.
great.
I would just add that the Public Children's Service Agencies, I know, will all be together in December. So if there are available ID cards, we could bring them to the conference and they could bring them from there, which may be helpful for them to start sharing with the kids. And we can try to figure out what it would take for looking at the documents required. Some of our kids in custody won't have all of that. So figuring out if they're in custody, if we can get them an ID would be helpful. So we'll work through that as well.
And good point, because we're having a conference for the juvenile and probate judges 4th and 5th of December in Columbus, so a lot of them will
That'd
be
be a
there.
perfect time.
So if I can get a box of them, I'll hand them out, so.
Hey, Judge, can you get us 5 to 10 minutes on the agenda to talk about the program, what it is?
I'll work on that.
Excellent.
Yep, I
So-
absolutely will. I'll let you know.
We'll just keep creating work for everybody. How about that?
at least,
Yeah, yeah, we get a table out, we'll get a table in the lobby of wherever it is. How about that? We do something like
I'll
that.
get you there.
Okay.
Hey, I have a
Excellent.
quick question.
Yes.
It might be more like school safety or maybe for the school side. At the conference last week, somebody had brought up Smile Safe. I don't know if any of you guys have ever heard of it. I had not, but it sounds like it's a program from what we gathered at the conference through Life Touch, which is who does school photos, and NECMEC. So it gives the parents or the schools the ability, once they report to NECMEC that this child is missing, maybe they can get that school photo. So I would love to get more information if through the school safety center, if you could help us with that, or if there's something more we could do to get access to that database if it exists.
That's gonna be a Kristen Slaper. We're gonna put Kristen Slaper on that one. How about that? See, I knew you came up front for a reason. Huh? For a reason there, Slaper? All right. Any other questions? So Kristen will follow up with you on that one, and we'll bridge that for you. So, all right, thank you very much, appreciate it. All right, moving on to the next set of recommendations, which are gonna be 7, 15, and 18. Let's go with 7. The Ohio Office of Criminal Justice Services should expand its Ohio Prisoner Extradition Reimbursement Program to allow grant funding to be used to pay law enforcement for costs associated with returning interference with custody suspects to Ohio. That's number 7. Number 15 is the Ohio Collaborative Community Police Advisory Board should review and revise its missing persons law enforcement standard and model policy in accordance with this working group's recommendations. The revision should include a best practices guide developed in partnership with BCI for the working with families of missing persons. And then number 18 is the Ohio Department of Children and Youth, the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services, the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, BCI, and the Ohio Office of Criminal Justice Services should work with local law enforcement to develop a pilot program that utilizes advocates to support at-risk youth who regularly leave their homes or group setting. So we have, for this one, we have Kelly Carey and Director Winty. So Kelly, actually we can do it from the seats. So we'll kick it to Kelly first and have you present on those recommendations.
Great, thank you, Director. So for the first one, number 7, under extradition. So the Office of Criminal Justice Services oversees the Prisoner Extradition Reimbursement Program. And so we were able to update our guidance for our grants and reimbursement process, as well as our FAQ fact sheet, to now allow interference with custody as a reimbursable offense. So it's officially allowed as a reimbursable offense. And in our grant system, the Office of Criminal Justice Services, our grants team, has added a drop down so that we can actually track how often folks actually apply for that reimbursement. reimbursement, because I think that could be really helpful for this working group to know how many people are actually looking for reimbursement for that specific charge as well.
Good. So let me add on to that. We had a phone call, we do a quarterly phone call with public safety officials, criminal justice partners, law enforcement partners across the state. We had that call this morning, and Nicole Daner, who's the director of the Office of Criminal Justice Services, did put out to our partners at local law enforcement, both the Ohio Chiefs Police Association, the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association, Attorney General's Office, BCI was on the call, that that funding was available and for this specific offense. So we are starting to push that information out as well. So let me kick it back to you.
Perfect. All right, number 15. The recommendation was to update the missing person standard and sample policy with the Ohio Collaborative Community Police Advisory Board. So this was in a sample policy and a standard that previously existed before the missing persons working group started, but we wanted to take all the good recommendations that we all shared and be able to make sure that that actually aligned with the recommendations, and that there was information that maybe best practice language and things that we really learned from our presentations we wanted to make sure was added to the sample policy. So a couple of things that were added. Our team at the Office of Criminal Justice Services, our anti-trafficking team, as well as the law enforcement services with the Office of Criminal Justice Services, and then Bruce, as well as some of the other members of the Community Police Advisory Board, came together. We added new resources for law enforcement investigating missing persons cases. So a lot of the resources that we talked about, we made sure were added into that sample policy and standard. We also linked right to the landing page over at BCI, so that was kind of a one-stop shop for everyone. We updated language and definitions for best practice language. We noticed that a lot of the sample policies, and this is what happens when we create long documents sometimes, is we start to interchange words and no one knows what they mean. They're like, does critical missing mean high risk, or what does that mean? And so we created a definition sheet, and then we got rid of all of the definitions that really just didn't fit anymore. So I think it'll really be helpful when people are building their policies out in the state. We highlighted the importance of reporting to NCIC because that was such a big thing we talked about as a group. We also included more information on reporting when responding to youth who habitually run and who are those that are in crisis. That was a small portion of the policy, but we really fleshed that out so that officers had more information on how to respond. And then last, we updated the special consideration section to include those with developmental and cognitive disabilities.
Excellent. So before we go any further, any questions about any of those initiatives or recommendations? All right, Director Wente.
So I can start, but Kelly, I know you've been heavily involved in the RONI project. So I'm gonna skip the RONI project because some of the other work that we're doing at the Department of Children and Youth outside of finding money and working on this pilot is directly a result of the work from this work group. We heard a lot of conversations around our kids and children's services run away, they use law enforcement resources, why are they running away, what's happening, how do we prevent that? So one of the things that we shared after we shared the data with you all, we shared it with our public children's service agencies, we also shared it with our group homes. So when we figured out that our kids 13 to 17 are most likely to run in the first 2 weeks, and if they run in the first 2 weeks, they run again in the next week, we shared that to say, look, we know our kids are at risk. You can't wait 30 days to see them. We also told them at the same time that we should be connecting them with their foster care liaison in their school district. So there's another adult outside of the space that they're in to have eyes on them and for them to be a resource. We're working with the Department of Education and Workforce to really beef up those foster care liaisons. They're required in federal law, but every school district is different and they use them, varying. So we want to make sure that we're educating and giving them resources to make those a little more fruitful for our kids. One of the major reasons is because oftentimes our kids run because they feel like they don't have an option. They're afraid, or they don't have something, or they're afraid of a consequence. And we want another adult outside of their caseworker to be available to them. So we're really working to try to beef that up. We are also in the space of updating treatment plans. Some of our kids are quite capable of going on a walk at night. And right now, if that's not in their treatment plan, what we have found is we're calling law enforcement for that. Because when they leave unallowable, that isn't okay. So we're updating our treatment plans, and we actually have 5 staff that are looking at these treatment plans to make sure that our kids are getting what they need. It is a direct result of the conversations we've had because we weren't meeting our kids where we were, which led us down the path of how do we get to the RONI project. Something else that came as a result of that is we talked to Franklin County Children's Services, and they invested money to hire 4 mentors in Dayton. Franklin County has about 50 kids that are placed in Dayton today. And they wanted to make sure that they had boots on the ground that could serve as mentors, because they know when those adults are in their life, they're less likely to run, and that they're getting better resources and support. So in addition to the RONI work, which we're trying to find money for, and I'll let Kelly really take the lead on because she's done so much of the good work, there's a lot of other information and action that's happening because we recognize the issues it's creating in the missing children's data reporting, but also the resources it's taking when they could be used someplace else. So just wanted to share a couple of other updates.
Yeah, appreciate it. Kelly, you want to talk about RONI?
Absolutely. So if you guys remember from the last couple of meetings we had, we talked about RONI, which was a new pilot program out of Denver, Colorado, which gave assistance to law enforcement who are investigating missing youth and provided advocates. So we had Denver RONI come and present to a small group of stakeholders, including Dayton Police, a nonprofit in Dayton, the Department of Children and Youth, BCI, DBH, as well as our crew. And she came and we were able to just pick her brain. What works, what doesn't work. They shared their policy documents with us. We have since met monthly since the Missing Persons Working Group has wrapped up, and we have found money to be able to pilot this program. So money from the Office of Criminal Justice Services, money from the Department of Children and Youth, and not just money to be able to fund this pilot program, which we're hoping to launch. I'm being ambitious here, but it's going to be, we're hoping Q1 of next year, January to March, is kind of the goal of launching this. We already have talked to the nonprofit that we've identified, as well as Dayton PD, to be able to funnel those resources to them. But not only are we going to provide the money, but what I think is even more important is the technical assistance, the training. How do you do this work well on the ground? And so my team, the anti-trafficking team, as well as a team from the Department of Children and Youth, we're actually hiring an additional position to be able to not just oversee this program, but really oversee all the work that we're doing with youth crisis and response stabilization, which is really cool. So we'll be able to support these amazing people who are going to do the work on the ground. And then last, because we talked about we need program outcomes. If we want to see a pilot program like this work, we have to be able to evaluate it. And so we've already contacted a university and asked if they would do an outside independent evaluation of the program. So that's really exciting. And what I would say to you all is that if we get some great results, the hope is that we can continue the good work and continue to seek funding in the next biennium.
So 2 follow-ups to that. Number 1 is Brett Crow, you need to be involved. We need to be involved whenever this launches, and talking about it. So I'm pretty sure that, again, we just need to highlight that what's going on with respect to this project. Number 2 is kind of the same thing that I talked here. Whatever lessons learned from the research, we need to share across the state. We need to make sure, because if this works and if it is beneficial for law enforcement, for the Job and Family Services there, for the kids that are there, then we need to replicate it. And now is the time, actually, probably next year, next summer, is the time to be running these pilots so that if there are budget asks, we can get those budget asks in for the next budget, so we can have some actual results. So whoever's doing your research and evaluation is going to have to be Johnny on the spot. We can't finish it, and let's say it starts first quarter. I'm going to just say January. Since you said first quarter. Again, the governor has rubbed off on all of us. So let's say it's January for the first quarter. Let's say we run it, we get 8 months worth of data. We need that turned around pretty quickly into a report so that we can make policy decisions with respect to the budget pretty quickly. So.
The good news is we get the critical incident reports real time, almost within 24 hours. So we'll know quickly as soon as these resources deploy if we start to see the critical incident reports go down. Okay. So we should have tangible results by next summer.
Okay, that'd be great. And that'll allow us to make those decisions.
It will allow us to quantify it and talk about return on investment.
So you and I, and probably OMAS, are probably going to have to, we'll be the ones that probably work together in the policy/budget space with respect to what we're going to do here. We figure out if we're going to do some grants, we got to figure out who they're going to fall under and whatnot.
And I think the question too is just looking at the scale and how many kids they can support. And that's gonna vary by need, of course, but our group home data should help figure that out once we see how it rolls here.
Right, gotcha. Excellent, great work. So any questions on that? I know we kicked out a lot of information there pretty quickly. We still go on, we have other recommendations, but any request, or excuse me, any questions with respect to those recommendations? Hey, great job to both of you. I know you've done a lot of work in this in a very short period of time, so we certainly appreciate it. So now we're going to recommendations 3 and 16. Recommendation number 3 was that the U.S. Department of Justice should expedite work to connect NCIC to the NamUs database as required by the Federal Help Find the Missing Act, otherwise known as Billy's Law. You remember, if you remember, there was a law that basically mandated those two systems to speak to each other, to work together automatically, so that you didn't have to necessarily replicate any data entry. So when you entered somebody into NCIC, it would automatically upload into NamUs. Because that is a federal issue, this group here, we don't have too much power. It's not like we can just get a hold of the General Assembly, or it's not like you guys can bring stakeholders to the table. But we asked the governor to send a letter to the United States Attorney General, which he did. And that letter went out October 28th of this year. I don't have any feedback. I haven't heard anything back, but I do want to let everybody know that letter did go, basically encouraging the Department of Justice to make that happen. So that happened. So number 16 is very similar. Number 16 is another letter. So it would be the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Office of Refugee Resettlement should implement a process to notify state refugee coordinators within the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services, or the Ohio Department of Children and Youth, when an unaccompanied minor is placed in Ohio. So do you remember the context for this one? The context for this one was between 2015 and now, 11,000 kids have come across the border or into Ohio unaccompanied. And it's been really, those numbers have been extremely high over the past 4 years, where kids, basically crossed the border. They didn't have an adult with them. They didn't really know where to send them, or maybe they said, hey, look, I got a relative in Ohio or something like that. And then nonprofits, remember what was happening is NGOs were getting involved in placing these kids. So the kids would be put in the, I won't say custody, but they'd be directed by NGOs on where to go. They'd be linked up with an NGO here in Ohio. They'd be placed here in Ohio. The problem was we were losing track of them. So we had a bunch of kids who had come across the border that local Job and Family Services didn't know where they were. Children's Services, didn't know where they were. We have a state coordinator for refugee resettlement within Ohio. They didn't know necessarily where these kids were, so it was a problem because that makes those kids incredibly vulnerable. You don't know, they're just set up perfectly to be trafficked or exploited. So again, it's a federal issue. The governor sent a letter to the Department of Health and Human Services, again, on October 28th, making that recommendation. Just say, hey, look, when you're placing a kid here, just make sure that we know. So that letter went out, and I don't have any feedback on, we haven't received any information back from the federal government on that one as well. So those are recommendations 3 and 16. Now, if you are keeping a scorecard here on our recommendations. Yes.
If I could add a little bit about the NamUs recommendation.
Yes, yep.
So myself, Dana Forney, who's our Director of Criminal Intelligence, and Jenny Lester, who is one of our criminal intelligence analysts, we've been working with NamUs, or we've been communicating with NamUs about fixing this missing data. So NamUs is part of the Department of Justice, and NCIC is part of the Department of Justice. And every agency enters their missing people into NCIC. So it should be able to walk across the hall to NamUs, and it doesn't. And that's what Billy's Law hoped to fix. So in talking with NamUs, the issue they have is they require more data fields than NCIC provides. And it's not really consequential data fields, in my opinion. So what matters is there. The information that NamUs could use to run through their algorithm to compare it to maybe unidentified human remains or vice versa. And they don't accept it because there's some fields that are probably not consequential that they don't get from NCIC. So that is the travesty to me. And we continue to work with them and talk to them. Of course, they've been off the grid now for a while, but it's very slow going. The other thing that happened in Ohio was we used to with our clearinghouse enter those missing persons into NamUs, and they changed our designation to a support designation, which means we can enter it, but they're not going to publish it. And so if we enter it, they email something back to the agency to get approval to publish it. And if that email goes to a dead account or it goes to someone who thinks it's junk, it doesn't get answered. So we are continuing to have the conversation with NamUs about those two things as well.
And Bruce, you bring up a good point. Like, that is a fairly frequent occurrence as far as emails going to dead accounts because people change jobs or they move or they retire, and then it just disappears. It goes like into a vacuum.
And that's problematic with NamUs because they're not an agency-based submission. That's an individual. So an individual at the agency submits the information and they become the coordinator of that information. If that individual leaves, it's dead. It's dead air where the email goes back to a non-existent account. So I think they're in the process maybe. I think they're changing their vendor, and they, hopefully they're considering changing their back end as well.
Yeah, again, with it being non-consequential or non-mandatory type information, you would think that they would figure this out. So it's a shame. Well, hopefully that letter from the governor to the Attorney General at least causes somebody to take a look at it and be like, hey. And then again, you would have to believe that somebody with some level of common sense, once they actually looked at it, would be like, hey, look, wait a second. Is this it? Is this the only problem? So
there's a lot of roadblocks.
Yeah.
Trust me.
Just to give credit where credit's due, I think the House passed a resolution as well for that integration of NamUs and NCIC to pass to the Department of Justice as well. So
okay, so that's good to know.
Yeah.
Well, I guess here's the other thing that we could probably do is we could get on our federal congressional delegation. And, if a lot of times that moves the needle. So if there was a letter from, the congressmen and women from Ohio and then the senators to the Department of Justice as well.
Where it went from there, I went down and provided, or I did a written form, but written testimony for that, but I don't know if they ever sent it out, but they did pass it, I think they did.
Okay.
Resolution, so.
Kristen Slaper will follow up on that for us. How about that? So.
It was Resolution 227.
Resolution
House
227.
so.
Excellent. She'll send it out by email. She'll check on it for us. Okay. All right. So listen, we're coming down to the end. Like any other questions on that? Don't you love how when everybody else is presenting, I'm like, does anybody have any questions for Emily Turok? That when I'm presenting, I don't ask for questions. So, all right. So if you're keeping score, all of them, we've addressed all of the recommendations except for one. And as you can see, again, there's been movement. There is at least some kind of movement on all of these. There is one where we don't have movement right yet, but I think we're working towards it. So recommendation number 10, the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services and the Ohio Department of Health should develop a model policy outlining information healthcare providers are legally permitted to share with law enforcement officers investigating missing persons cases. These agencies should also develop a continued professional training course to further educate the healthcare industry on law enforcement exemptions to the to HIPAA. So this is the one that you brought up, Sergeant Ersham. So for context, this is where we got a pretty good lead where we think a missing person is, and that missing person may be in treatment or a hospital or something like that. And we're just trying to figure out whether or not the person's alive or dead, whether or not the person is around before we exhaust a ton of law enforcement resources searching for somebody who literally may be in our backyard. I understand. I get it. I understand the need to keep this information private to a certain extent. But as Sergeant Ersham pointed out, there are exceptions that allow hospitals and treatment providers to communicate this information with law enforcement for the limited purpose of, again, confirming whether or not somebody's alive. We had our legal take a look at it at our office, and ultimately we reached out to the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, because what we wanted was at least just some, I won't even say guidance, we're not giving them legal guidance. We just wanted maybe a one-pager or a bulletin to go to these hospitals to basically say, hey, look, the Ohio Missing Persons Working Group has done some research on this issue. This was raised. Here is an actual legal exception that applies. Whether or not you adhere to that legal exception, you know, that's up to you, but this exists. It's not just an automatic no because of HIPAA. And what we don't want is we don't want people misinformed or miseducated that HIPAA absolutely positively prevents you from sharing this information from law enforcement under these circumstances. We owe it to these hospitals or these administrators or the staff at the hospital to at least provide them with notice of what the law is. The OMAS, and correct me if I'm wrong, but OMAS regulates these hospitals, or at least has some oversight over some of these hospitals. Yeah. So there is some hesitance on behalf of OMAS to issue what they think is legal guidance. So we are working through that issue. We just hit this actually today as we were talking about this issue. Here's what we're going to do. My legal is just going to do the bulletin. We're going to do a draft bulletin of what it should look like. And then we're just going to come back to OMAS and the Department of Health and be like, hey, will you at least help us put this out? That way it takes it off of your shoulders a little bit. We'll put the Ohio Department of Public Safety logo on it and whatnot. So if there is a perceived conflict for you all, we'll try to alleviate that. But we're just gonna grab the bull by the horns and try to at least get this educational piece out. So any questions on that? All right. So here's what I want to do before we end. That's what we have as far as the substantive presentations with where we're at on the recommendations. I think, again, you all should pat yourselves on the back, congratulate yourselves. It is unbelievable. It is remarkable what you all have been able to do in 6 months since we put this group together as far as actually putting stuff into place. And again, BCI, I mean, you guys jumped all over this. You guys are the clearinghouse. You guys are the leaders on this anyways. But man, I just am so impressed at how you just jumped into it and these issues that we've identified, everybody kind of got together and it's rowing in the same direction. So I'm very happy with that. Let's go just around the world. Let's go around the table real quick since it has been about 6 months. Is there anything that anybody, if you have any thoughts, anything you'd like to see, anything you think we need to do next, any comments on what we presented today, we're just going to go around the world and talk about it. So I'll start here, Director Winnie.
I hit on our stuff around group homes. It's going to remain a priority in addition to the RONI commitment, just to make sure that we continue to push for best practice and better outcomes for kids and the alleviation of resources. So that's going to be where we focus a lot of our time.
Judge?
Again, I think I've touched on base on some of these things. I think as much as we can get the word out for kids, families, adults that go missing, I think that helps get these processes in place. So,
thank you. Chief?
For me, I'm excited about the investigative network and being able to collaborate with everybody else for, like, especially the larger agencies to assist the smaller ones as we move forward.
I'm going to echo what the chief said, and I think the connections that we've made amongst the recommendations that we made is valuable. I was able to speak to Sergeant Erstrom several times. He's called me, I called him. Same thing with Rebecca from Toledo. She's called me actually just yesterday about helping her find a kid in Cleveland. So just a network that we've made as a result of this was a big thing for me as well.
Sylvia?
I think the big thing is, obviously, one of the things we already talked about is making sure that families of the missing have resources available to them. We think at Cleveland Missing that families are victims as well. And so the fact that we're putting this pilot project together with law enforcement, we're hopeful that we're going to see a big tick up in terms, at the very least, of family satisfaction with law enforcement and that they're getting their needs met. I mean, Amy knows firsthand, but so do I, because I had a missing person in my life that was gone for 9 years, and I know what that looks like. So I think that we're really excited about it, and we think great things are going to happen, and we'll figure out statistically how we're going to that. And then the other thing I thought about, and this is a conversation for later, is looking at legislation, and legally right now, families aren't seen, quote unquote, as victims. I had a meeting this morning with the VOCA folks, and they just don't see families as victims, which is a conversation for another day. But I think that we have to start looking at that legislatively, because that really does jam up money for families. And they're not going to get that money for services that they so need unless we start looking at that.
Yes, so actually, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole here.
You probably don't, Director Wilson.
So, yeah, I guess the question would be, how do you do it after a certain period of time? You know, that's an interesting concept. That's an interesting concept in how you deal with that. So that is a conversation for another day. How about that? So
how about that?
Yeah, how about that? So, Sergeant Ersham?
I just think the working group's been very successful. I'm glad to be a part of it. I've made great connections, still do. And the recommendations were wonderful, and I think most of them are moving in the right direction. It's been wonderful.
Thank you. Captain Reines?
For me, one of the things that I'm looking at, and I know Kristen's on a meeting we have next week with the Highway Patrol's legislative liaison, is in reference to that House Bill 359 for Joshua's Law. And, you know, the representative kind of hit the nail on the head when she was talking about her involvement in the language of that bill that she's been working on. I kind of see our role or our next steps in getting that codified for the Endangered Missing Child Alert in terms of making sure the language is right and it's written in a way that is beneficial to law enforcement. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. But no, I've appreciated being on this work group. It's good stuff.
I appreciate the work. I know you guys had a lot to do as well, so as everybody did, but I appreciate that. Dr. Smith-Lockwood.
Yeah, I just really appreciate the work of Director Carey and Director Wente. Anything that's related to the children, it is moving us in the right direction. I told Director Wilson just before I sat down, I'm actually in the throes of a missing child right now who went missing last Thursday, and we don't know where the child is. And so it's one of those things when you're in it and you see how all of this work is going to, I was taking some notes even today to take back to our law enforcement agency, and it's one of the situations that you might imagine where a lot of things are not appropriately placed in the child's life, and so, you know, getting all of the communication together is essential, and this work is definitely moving in the right direction. So I appreciate everybody on this team.
Appreciate it. Appreciate your participation, your expertise, and then talk to Jenny Lester before you get out of here. You guys contact or make contact on your situation that you have there. Amy?
Just a huge thank you. That's really what I have to say. Just thank you to each and every one of you for everything that you've done for this working group. It's just amazing changes, so I just appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for your story and your participation. And again, you were a big driver of why we're all sitting here. So we certainly appreciate that.
Thank you.
Chris?
Just happy to be part of the Roney Recommendation Work Group, and I will put in a plug for Kelly, who did a tremendous amount of work and a great job in a short amount of time. Yeah.
That's good. Appreciate your participation. Yep. Jenny?
Just echo the network and the resources that we can all work together on these cases. I'm working on enough of these cases to know that you can't do it without resources. So merging them all together and getting some of the stuff in legislation and making it happen is important to me.
And I know this is your area too. So Jenny, you all know, Jenny is like one of the subject matter experts as far as the investigation of this kind of stuff. So your expertise has been crucial to our ability to do the work. So appreciate your participation. Bruce?
Said a lot, but I will have Dana Forney, if you could wave your hand or something. She's our criminal intelligence director. Jenny Lester, you've already heard about, but just a lot of appreciation to those two. They were not only the intelligence and the motivation behind a lot of things that happen at BCI in regards to this work group, but they bring a lot of passion to it as well, and that's what really amplifies their impact. And we are always ready and willing to help if anyone needs anything from law enforcement. Our criminal intelligence unit is available. They do these things, and they care deeply about it. So it was a good experience here, and I'm very happy to continue pursuing a lot of these recommendations.
Yeah, one of the big things I saw out of this is I just reaffirm my belief that the Attorney General's Office, BCI, is the proper place to house our efforts in this space at the state level. So everybody else rolls up next to you, and we need to work collaboratively, but you all are the agency that should lead in this area. There's no doubt about that. So, Kelly?
I think the group has been wonderful. I think I've called a lot of people around the table, and I think the collaboration has been the best part of just being able to pick up the phone and know that you can reach out to somebody. Another thing I wanted to add, just day to day with our work with our anti-trafficking team, we see so much crossover with so many of the youth that we serve. We get phone calls all the time for youth who are habitually running, who are at risk of being trafficked. We just rolled out a screening tool to identify missing youth within Children's Services. So that if they are trafficked, they can get identified and connected to services. So there's just been a lot of intersection with my day-to-day work in this missing persons working group, which has been really wonderful to see us all work together towards something I'm so passionate about as well.
And again, you are one of the people who has just been incredibly busy in this space, carrying out these recommendations and making sure that we adopt them and that everybody's working together. So I appreciate the extra work that we put on your table as well. I'm going to come. Yes.
I think it's something to just be proud of. I've gone to some of the academies, police academies, Sandusky being the most recent, and I printed off copies of this report for all of the potential new officers, and they were blown away. They had no idea. They were looking at recommendations, and I said, Ohio's leading the way. I don't know what other states are doing, but I know what we're doing. And it's something that I think Ohio should just really be proud of, because I'm not hearing about it from other states, what they're doing on these kinds of issues. And some of the new up-and-coming police officers were very impressed, and they didn't know some of these things even existed. So I thought it was a big deal to be able to share it with them.
Yeah, so that's a great point. A lot of times when we work on these working groups, it's just something extra that we have to do. It's work in our subject matter, our area of expertise, and we just kind of get together and we do the work, and it's here sterile in an office or a building. But I think what we fail to realize a lot of times, man, is what we did and what we are doing as part of this group actually will move the needle. It actually will matter to the people that we serve, man. And I'm telling you, like, somebody's life will be saved because the recommendations of this group are enacted. Whether it's through one of the new alerts, or whether it's through somebody being educated, or whether it's a connection that you all make, and you're able, because you're an expert in this field, you're able to give a detective that doesn't really know X, Y, or Z a piece of information that allows them to rescue a kid or find a kid. And we, again, because we get caught up in the day-to-day of this is really our job, it's our job, it's part of what we do, we don't do a great job of realizing that it matters and it saves lives. And I just appreciate everybody's work in this. I am not letting Kristen Slaper get out of here without saying something, because she actually was behind the scenes and doing it. Before we go any further, though, I want to make sure our team, DPS team, we've got a list of our follow-up and what we need to do. Is that, all right, excellent. And then meetings that need to be set, follow-up meetings that need to be set. I want to make sure that we have that as well. when I say meetings, I'm talking internal meetings. This will be our last time of meeting. I think everything that we do from here on out can be done through email, through the group. You know, who knows, man? Maybe when we do RONI, if there's a press conference when that actually starts, we get the gang back together and send out invites for the press conference. I think that would be something that we'd take a look at. But as far as actual formal meetings, this is the end. Kristen was the behind-the-scenes person who made all of this happen. So, Kristen, I'm going to give the floor to you. Any comments you have with respect to what you've heard today, where we're headed, what we need to do?
Not really. Director knows I love public speaking. I think the one thing I will say is, Judge, you mentioned a conference. We talked at the ALERT conference. I talked at the ALERT conference last week and was able to represent all of you guys and your hard work. So thank you for that. But I will say, if you go out in public and you're speaking, think of this group and think of ways to kind of spread the message, because it is the new detectives that don't know, you know, and we hear there's 900 and some law enforcement agencies, and really it's that we don't want to operate in a silo. So I appreciate the opportunity to network as much as I dislike public speaking, but I appreciate the opportunity to network, and I would just ask that, you know, you spread this amongst your groups so that we can continue to build that network and you know, keep this energy going, I guess.
So let me one up it real quick. She said spread it amongst your groups. A lot of us are members of professional associations or different groups that have conferences or educational opportunities. If any, and again, it could be something as easy as roll call or in-service or something like that. If you want us to come talk about the work that this group did and our recommendations and where we're at, Kristen Slaper will gladly come talk to your, for real. So we'll send Kristen.
Look at boss's face back there. He's like, what
we'll send Kristen to kind of give an update. She represented us. She represented all of us last week at a conference. So she's got the template ready to go. And if you want to spread the word and educate people in your sphere of influence, we certainly can make that happen. Just reach out and we'll get her on the schedule. So, for the good of the order, anything else? That's all I got. Thank you very much. Appreciate all of you. Yep.